Hello and welcome to the Gamers Tavern, episode 19, Romance at the Game Table. Two of our guests, Bruce Cordell and Torah Cottrill, had to make a hasty exit about the midway point, but we managed to soldier on with Carrinn Seabolt as we discussed gaming with your partner, as well as how to find a gamer to love of your own, and what to do if the love of your life isn't as into games as you are. So, yeah, this one's a little extra mushy, but it's just in time for Valentine's Day. So, grab a drink from the bar, take a seat at the table in the corner, and we'll be right back after this word from our sponsor and our contest announcement.
Have you been looking for a dark fantasy RPG setting? Are you interested in seeing a new take on the action horror genre? Then you should check out Accursed. Accursed is a setting for the Savage Worlds RPG created by me, Ross Watson, and my good friends Jason Marker and John Dunn. It is a world where the heroes are monsters who fight for redemption against the witches who have conquered their land. To find out more about Accursed, search for Accursed on drivethrurpg.com. Accursed is now on sale there and in many other fine retailers for gaming PDFs. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy Accursed.
Gamers Tavern's listenership has exploded in 2014, and we want to reward you, our loyal listeners, by holding a contest. We've got a winner-take-all bundle of amazing games, and to top it all off, an iPod Shuffle preloaded with the latest episodes of the Gamers Tavern. So, what other games do you get? How about a signed copy of Accursed, the dark fantasy Savage Worlds campaign setting where you play the monsters fighting against the witches who cursed you, provided by Meliorvia. A signed copy of Tefra, a steampunk fantasy role-playing game of high adventure set in an alternate world, provided by Cracked Monocle. A signed copy of Dementalism, a card game from the twisted and strange world of Lowlife, provided by Mother Oath Creations. And a signed copy of Better Angels, a game of demonic comic book supervillainry, provided by Arc Dream Publications. And you also get one free admission to Con on the Cob, a celebration of game, art, freaks, and fun in Hudson, Ohio from October 16th through the 19th with the purchase of one adult admission. In order to secure your chance to win this amazing prize package, send an email to contest@gamerstavern.org with the subject line Mac sent me. Include your name, mailing address, and one suggestion for how you would make the Gamers Tavern podcast even better. Once again, that email address is contest@gamerstavern.org with the subject line Mac sent me. Sorry, but this contest is for U.S. residents only. Full contest rules are available at gamerstavern.org/contest. Get your entry in by midnight Central Time on March 10th, 2014 for your chance to win it all.
Hello and welcome to episode 19 of the Gamers Tavern. I'm your host, Ross Watson.
And I'm Daryl Mott Jr.
And tonight we have with us three excellent guests. We have Carrinn
Seabolt,
or Carrinn Seabolt, as she prefers to be called.
Well, we're not actually married, so.
I know. But I just see you guys together so often, I kind of assumed. My apologies.
No worries.
And we have Bruce Cordell and Torah Cottrill.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thank all of you guys for coming on the show with us. We're really excited to have you because tonight's topic is about romance at the game table.
Happy Valentine's Day, everyone.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
When this podcast goes live on the internets, it will be February 13th, right before the holiday itself. So it is going to be very serendipitous, as they say. Okay, so I like to do a thing when we bring on our guests. We always like to make sure and ask them about their gaming character sheet. This is just so our listeners get an understanding of who you are and where they can find you on the interwebs and what they may know you for. So why don't we start with, since Carrinn, this is your first time on the show, what is your gaming character sheet like?
Mostly Savage World, and of that, mostly Shinetar.
Which is awesome. And
I'm rather pleased about it.
Although you actually haven't seen this episode go up yet, by the time this episode goes live, we will have our Gamers Tavern Awards up. And my pick for best setting of 2013 was Shintar.
Awesome. Yay. I have a very special love for Shintar, not just because my sweetie wrote it, but also just the setting itself and the fact that I edited it.
Excellent.
And speaking of editors, we also have Torah Cottrill with us.
Torah, what's your gaming character sheet like?
Let's see. Lately, I've been writing a lot of short stories. I have one in an anthology called By Fairy Light. It's put out by Broken Eye Books. It's just come out. Looks really nice. A lot of really cool people in there with me. Make me look good. And I got another one out called The Awakened. And that is Dark Quest Books. That's very exciting.
That is very cool. All right. And what are those stories about? Do you mind telling us?
Well, the Awakened anthology was, I don't think I'm giving anything away. It's designed to go with a new game setting that hasn't yet been kickstarted. So we're sort of preparing the ground.
All right. Well, okay. We'll have to bring you back when that Kickstarter goes live. You can tell us all about it then.
Cool.
And, of course, Bruce Cordell. So maybe you can tell our listeners where they might know you from.
Let's see. If we're going to go back to the character sheet analogy, I'm a skeptical paradox who, let's see, conducts weird science, let's say, which means that lately I've been working in the Numenera and the Strange universe, which recently kickstarted. But before that, I had a pretty long career writing D&D, about 18 years, actually, now that I think back. But, yeah.
That's pretty awesome. You've been writing D&D for a whole person.
A whole person who used to be able to drink alcohol, although not quite anymore.
Well, a person who can vote.
Yep.
There you go. Yes.
So, yeah, The Strange just recently wrapped up, isn't that right?
Yeah, a couple months ago. I think wrapped up at the middle of November. Yeah, or maybe towards Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Yeah, and it looks like it did really well. Over 400,000 pledged. That's got to be awesome.
I'm very excited. Yes, it certainly met the goals that and exceeded the goals we wanted it to make. So all is well.
Fantastic.
I've been writing like crazy to actually hit all the promised dates to get it out and ready to go by August.
Well, all right. So after we've kind of told everybody what we do, the next thing we like to do here on the Gamers Tavern is just kind of tell our listeners what we've been playing lately, because we all love games. So since we just got done talking to Bruce, what are you playing lately?
Well, as you can probably imagine, I've been doing a lot of playtesting for The Strange. And I've been running internal playtests and also, sitting in on other people's games and talking to playtesters. So pretty much for me, it's been all Strange all the time. Although I am planning to play a 40th anniversary D&D game that my friend Monty is going to run with several other folks this weekend. I'm actually really looking forward to that. So I kind of dip back into the old font of D&D for a while to celebrate, how great, 40 years is, 2 people at least.
I've heard that Monty does know a few things about D&D.
You brought up very casually your friend Monty. That would be Monty Cook, would it not?
Of course.
Yeah. Well, he's an old friend, so I think I can do that casually.
I just want to make it clear for the listeners.
Gotcha.
I'm one of those, probably one of the very few people that ever goes up to Monty at Gen Con and says, "Man, I loved your work on Champions."
And you probably make him smile every time.
Because he was an editor back at Iron Crown back in the golden age, I like to say, of 4th edition Champions, which is one of my most favorite games of all time. So there's that. All right, thank you, Bruce. What about you, Torah? What have you been playing lately?
I have kind of an insane work schedule, so when I get home, it's all Borderlands all the time.
Ooh, Borderlands 2, I assume?
Yeah. We've played through, 3 times? 2.5 times?
We're about ready to break down and buy some DLCs.
You've got to play the Tiny Tinas.
Yeah.
Everybody says that, yeah.
We've actually been waiting to... we have to actually accomplish some trip planning, and so as soon as
the DLC is our reward.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, fantastic. I'm also an enormous Borderlands 2 player, so that's awesome to hear. What's your favorite class, Torah?
I'm enjoying the Commando.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good class. I like that one too. All right. So that brings us to Carrinn Seabolt. Miss Seabolt, can you tell us about what you've been playing lately?
Well, unfortunately, things have been rather chaotic, so we haven't done a lot of RPGs. We have, however, been thoroughly enjoying Sentinels of the Multiverse in mass quantities.
Can you tell us a little bit about that game?
It is a fantastic comic books created for the purpose of the game. Card game. Each character has his or her own individual deck. So it's not like a deck builder, but it is very much a cooperative, you are playing a superhero team going up against a villain or villain team. Some really odd environments.
Sweet.
Every single game we have played of it has been just delightful. Even the ones where we lost.
I'm going to have to try and pick this game up.
The actual play is phenomenal.
Sweet.
Yeah, you always know a good game when you have fun, even when you lose. That's why I love Pandemic.
Insert joke about having to review that sometime here. Okay, so Daryl, what have you been playing lately other than Pandemic?
Well, actually, I haven't been getting a chance to play that recently. I have been spending, again, a lot of time in prep. I was actually going to, when we're recording this, my birthday was last Saturday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And I was going to put together a last minute, like all day board game thing, but then the weather happened and everyone's plans and I just couldn't get things together. However, I was caught up in the chaos both on Sunday and today of Gen Con registration.
Ooh, yeah.
The registration to get into Gen Con and then the registration to make sure I have a place to sleep in Gen Con.
It's that time of year, isn't it?
Yeah. I do believe I'm the only person in history that's ever said, "Oh, damn it, I'm going to have to stay at the downtown Hilton Resort and it's going to be cheaper than the hotel I planned on." Fuck.
Yeah, it does seem weird to complain about it, doesn't it?
Yeah, I am so psyched. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm actually going to get to meet a lot of the podcast guests that we've had over the past few months. So
this is going to be your first Gen Con.
My very first Gen Con, yes.
All right. Well, I've also done my Gen Con work as well, and I'm still running Accursed every weekend, and I got my players back who had been out for some medical issues, so it was nice to have the whole group together, and we had a really great fun session that included the son of one of my friends, and it was his first time role-playing ever, and his dad sent me a text later saying he just can't stop talking about the game, which means I think it was a success.
Nice job.
Well, thank you. So that's what I've been playing lately. I've been also trying to play some games on Skype with Shadowrun, although that hasn't succeeded as well as I'd like. I'd probably just better leave it at that. And that will probably take us right into tonight's main topic, which is romance at the game table. Now, I think it's fair to say that all of our guests tonight are both gamers and experienced at romance with gamers. Would you agree with that? Don't all answer at once. That's okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, what she said.
Right. Well, that's great. That's great because I think the first question I want to pose to our panel of guests tonight, and whoever wants to answer first is fine. What is the best thing about gaming with your significant other?
Being able to share the anecdotes and relive the stories later.
So yeah, you just like having someone to say, "Man, wasn't that cool?"
Yeah.
All right. Yeah,
and sharing strategy. It's a continuation of the whole partner thing.
Cool.
Partner in game as well as life.
So just kind of additional time to get that bond.
Yeah.
Together. All right.
That
Yeah,
and the thought that goes into gaming.
Okay.
I big brains.
Well, you definitely picked a good one with Sean.
Yep, I first fell in love with his brain before anything else.
Okay, Bruce, and you were going to say something as well?
Actually, I like that answer better than what I was going to say. It's all very true. You know, if you, it's one thing to be in a relationship with somebody where you only spend, 40-30% of, the kind of things you enjoy doing together. But if you spend 60-80% of the kind of things you enjoy doing together, that makes that relationship, like full. Your life is full of that person as opposed to only, partly filled. So
very true. Now I'm going to say something else though too. Is I think all of us, including Daryl and myself, on this particular episode, gaming is not just something we do, occasionally. It's like a big part of our lives. So I would imagine that being able to share something that's so core to who you are is probably a really big benefit as well.
Yeah, I've got to definitely say that. It's to the point for me, I remember about a month and a half ago, I'd just finished editing one of the hardest episodes I had to edit of the podcast. I was writing a giant article for Any Cool News, and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm so burned out. I don't even want to think about gaming. I need to do something. I finally got everything done. I need a night just to myself to just think about something other than gaming. I think I'm going to watch Will Wheaton's Tabletop all night.
Yeah, that's the kind of people we are. Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of important to me, and it's always great to share something that is that important with the person you're with, because it's a way to sort of bond with them, have a common link with them. I know I'm sure all of you and a lot of other gamers out in our audience know that after a while we kind of get our own little language, our own little secret in-jokes. If someone says, I attack the darkness, we all know that joke. Mm-hmm. It becomes kind of a common language between us. And if you can share that with the person you're with, that makes your bond together even stronger.
Right.
And now I have the video playing in my head.
Still funny after all these years.
That's an old one.
Interesting note. One of the writers on that sketch is Dan Harmon, who created Community.
Which, of course, celebrates Dungeons & Dragons in some really awesome episodes.
And I think about the time this is airing, their second D&D episode is going to be airing, too.
Oh, cool.
Now, I think we should also point out that tabletop gaming is what we're specifically talking about tonight. That is actually a more social event than, say, playing World of Warcraft together. Because you have, your friends at the table, you have, you're sometimes going over to other people's houses or inviting other people into your house. So how does that social interaction, how does that work for you guys when you are a couple?
Well, there's one thing I wanted to say real quick on this. Whenever I was dating someone who was in my gaming group, it ended up very quickly becoming almost like a regular dinner party that all our quote unquote mature friends were having, where they would invite each other over and cook casseroles and all these little dishes. That's what we would do. We together as a couple would get together like a couple hours before we were going to play games, and we would make dinner for our group. And there was another couple that played with us, so we were all kind of hanging out, and it was almost like a couple's night, only it involved us, slaying dragons and slaughtering orcs.
That sounds nice.
Sounds like my group. I know our group here at home is mostly, actually, the primary group is couples, despite the fact that one half of one of the couples lives very far away, so rarely gets to come. It's 4 couples gaming.
Oh, well, that's a really cool thing to have. I'd say it's actually very highly unusual, but very cool.
Again, the majority of my gaming experience has been gaming with couples, and more than once I've been at a table where it was on a regular basis where it was nothing but women.
Which makes
Some of
you
which
a
were
perfect
also
guest. Which makes you a perfect guest for tonight's topic. So we've talked about some of the things that we all like and enjoy about gaming with our significant others. What are some potential pitfalls that might come of this?
Really, you want us to talk about pitfalls when we're sitting here with maybe our significant other? I thought this was the Valentine's episode.
Do that to my character.
Well, just
I think Carrinn's going to have to be the one to talk about this one.
It makes for excellent radio.
Well, like I said, how could you do that to my character?
You know, if you hadn't wandered off by yourself, you might not be dead now.
Yeah, that's because I'm almost always the guy running my games. So when I'm gaming with someone I'm dating, I'm the DM and she's a player. And then I've got all the other players who kind of look at that as possibly a form of nepotism. Like maybe I'm being a little bit
tricky. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have the reverse problem.
That's the other thing is sometimes you'll overcompensate. Okay, I'm not showing favoritism. I'm going to kill her over and over and over again to show that I'm not being favored, giving her the cool magic items. Then you have the problems after the game's over and everyone's gone home.
We seemed to walk that line pretty well. We were playing with JD and Tomb of Horrors.
Oh, yeah.
That was that worked out fine. Everyone died, so, you know.
Rocks fall, you all die.
Well, I want to tell a quick story here. One of the best Dungeons & Dragons games I ever played in. We played for a long time. We went from 1st to 17th level, so it was a nice long campaign. But it started a little awkwardly. And part of the reason why it started awkwardly is the DM said, okay, you know, we're all here to make characters tonight. I said, okay, that sounds good. He says, all of you are making 1st level characters. And I said, okay, that's fine. He says, except my wife, who is playing a 5th level character.
What?
And we all kind of, okay, you know, at that moment. And he's like, no, you don't understand. She, you know, and then he went on to kind of explain. He says she was in the previous campaign and she wanted to bring her cold character over, and he also said I have a very small child and therefore she's not going to be here very often, so I don't think it's going to be a problem. And the deal is I think that was one of the, you know, kind of growing moments for me as a gamer, is to sort of give the DM my trust, right? It's to sort of say, okay, you know, this is going to be fine because you say it's going to be fine. And it was fine. It was more than fine. But I think that's fair to say that there is some awkwardness when that kind of situation comes up.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Gaming as a whole is more difficult once you're an adult, right? Just finding ways to find the time, and to negotiate those kinds of interpersonal relationships. Yeah, it's a more complicated process than it was when we were kids.
Would you say there is a potential pitfall in leaving what happens in the game at the game? Has that ever been something that you have seen or experienced?
No, but Bruce is the nicest person in the world, so we don't really have that problem.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I mean, when I was a kid, you know, maybe with some people, but I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it as adults. Certainly, we've had, you know, not to say that when we do play a lot of Borderlands recently, and we played many other games where we sit, you know, right next to each other, and sometimes my character will be a little more rambunctious, and I'll run off. And you know, I will. And
then you die, and I make fun of you.
Yeah. or I'll get her character killed, and then she'll be mad. She'll be a little irate.
Yeah.
But you know, that doesn't last outside the. That dissipates very, very quickly.
What happens in Borderlands stays in Borderlands.
Exactly.
That's right.
All right, Carrinn, it sounded like you had something to say. I just want to make sure you get your chance.
Oh, just as far as character bleed, not having experienced it, but having witnessed it. Wow. It gets kind of special.
Well, without naming names, could you maybe describe something you've seen at one point?
It'll be an odd combination of one person taking the character interaction overly personally and someone else being completely flippant, and the two intersecting at exactly the wrong time.
Well, I have seen this, yes.
Yeah. And it carrying over into real life. Fortunately, it wasn't a couple experiencing that at our table.
Well, maybe, you know, from the standpoint of a couple, maybe our listeners would probably want to know, like, what are some things they can do to maybe make sure that isn't an issue? What are some things they can do to, you know, keep things going smoothly in and out of game with their significant other? You got any suggestions?
Talk. Communicate.
Yeah, it's like everything else. You have to compromise sometimes.
Okay. Is there anything you have to be aware of? Would you say there's anything like extra that you would suggest someone do who's either running a game or hosting a game with his significant other? Is there something special that you think would probably be like advice you would give?
One thing that I have seen happen a lot is people who they will take their conflicts they may be having outside their gaming life and they'll act out those frustrations in character at the table, which is never a comfortable thing to happen. She's playing the thief and he's playing the ranger, and all of a sudden his magic arrow is gone, and I don't know where it went. Maybe if you'd cleaned the dishes, you would have found it.
Oh.
And things like that.
It's true. Whatever your relationship is away from the game, I think becomes magnified.
Now that you say that, I was playing with a group of people for a few years outside the office, and who were in my dojo, and certainly I could see some of the outside of the game interactions kind of come into play in the game, the way their characters interacted with each other, and it was I won't. I guess that's all I'll say on that. But you're right. It's very interesting to see that.
Well, I guess maybe I'll expand my question a little bit. Do you think if you were running a game, for example, would you consider some themes, maybe like romance between characters, or maybe even relationships between characters? Is that something you might treat with a little more care based on the relationships of the players themselves?
I've never actually DM'd. No, I guess I have. No, I've DM'd. No, I would just let the players do how they want to. But I guess I've never, other than like I was just talking about, I've never actually seen anyone go too far down that rabbit hole. So I haven't had to take any special care.
I think
and
it
otherwise,
depends on the group.
Yeah.
Do you ever find that if you're the significant other of the DM, you feel like you have to be on better behavior than everyone else?
Sometimes.
That's a great point to bring up. Is that something that you feel is true, Torah?
No, not always, but I do feel I'm sort of always aware that Bruce is my boyfriend, and that there is there's a relationship that you bring to the table. It's not a bad thing. It's not something that it's something I think you're always a little bit aware of.
Do you think that people hold you to a higher standard because of that?
Yes.
Okay.
And,
all right.
And I have been on that side of it as well, where I was the player and my girlfriend was the DM, and it does put a little bit of pressure on you, but not nearly as much as the other way, in my experience at least.
Really?
Because you feel like every single time something good happens to you, is it because I did something right in the game, or because she wants something after the game? But that was also the kind of relationship I was in with her, so that's different.
Everything's magnified. Yeah.
Well, I think that's probably something we should highlight for the listeners, is what you just said, Tor, is things are highlighted in the game that are part of having a gamer as your significant other, that your things in your relationship become, I'm trying to find another word other than magnified, but become larger and more prominent, I guess maybe would be a way to put it.
Intensified.
Yeah.
They kind of come to the surface and become a little bit more apparent.
A spotlight is shine.
Exactly.
Okay.
Oh no! Wait, editors unite! No, you can't say that.
I want to share a little quick story, but this is actually a story that's I think it illustrates the same thing, but it does it in a way that's both good and bad at the same time. I have a good friend of mine who runs some really excellent games. He's just a fantastic game master, and I try to be in his games as often as possible. And he always he tries to get his wife in all of his games that he can. So that means she knows him really, really well. And they were telling me a story about one of the games that they'd been in, where the game master says, "Okay, and a giant monster attacks the town." This is a superhero game, so all the superheroes were prepared, to sort of defend against the giant monster attack. And his wife's character says, No, wait. This is a distraction. This is obviously a distraction from the real crime going on somewhere else.
This story sounds a little familiar, Ross.
Oh, yeah. This story is actually on my blog.
It's been on a previous episode of the podcast.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it as well before there, but it put the GM in kind of an awkward position, because he's like, well, he had planned that it was just the giant monster attack. That was the focus of the game. But at the same, so he had to choose. He's like, do I continue with my story, or do I kind of empower my wife, who does know me really well? Do I empower her and say, okay, no, really, there is another crime somewhere else that this was all a distraction for? And I thought that was a very interesting dilemma.
But you don't think that's the sort of thing that GMs face, no matter who's at the table? If your player wants to take it in a new direction, you have to make that decision.
Yes, that's true, but I think it takes on a different dimension sometimes if that is your sneaking. And part of the reason why she did it in the first place is because she knew him so well.
And then it comes down to player knowledge versus character knowledge, and as a responsible gamer, the necessity of keeping the two separate, regardless of relationship issues.
True. And I think, that might have been the more responsible way to take it. But I think the final outcome was just fine as well. Sometimes.
How did he ultimately come down on that?
He ultimately decided, yes, there was another crime. Actually,
that's what I guessed.
And I think, like I said, sometimes those things can happen where it makes the story more interesting. So, I'm not gonna say anyone was wrong. I'm just gonna say it was an interesting experience.
No, it's also, as a DM, it's a challenge sometimes to, decide you're going to take it completely different, right? So it's certainly not wrong to say, hey, if my wife suggested this, there's no reason why I can't go down that road. In fact, it'll be fun to do that. But it sounds like you have information and knowledge that I probably don't possess.
Right. So what about if now this is something I alluded to a little bit before about relationships of the characters, but what if the characters start flirting with another player's character? Is that ever an issue? Does that ever bring up something that you guys have seen, or maybe not?
Oh no!
I've only ever seen it happen with players and NPCs. So, and that's
you essentially.
I was this. You have not lived uncomfortable until you're the DM playing a female character, being flirted at by a guy playing a female character, with his girlfriend sitting there staring daggers at him.
That actually sounds very funny to me.
Awkward.
It's there's almost enough space at this point in time that's now a funny story, but I still remember that look. I'm not the guy that likes to do the flirty at the NPC. I want to go get tavern wenches kind of games. I'm really uncomfortable about doing that. So that was happening in the first place was a problem. That she was sitting right next to him, obviously pissed, was not fun.
And he was oblivious to that?
I don't know if he was oblivious or just didn't care.
Oblivious or relishing in it.
Which one would be better?
Yes. Probably
right.
whichever one was not the case.
Okay, well, we've talked a little bit about, both the good sides and the potential pitfalls of gaming with your significant other. Let's talk about one other. This is a question I'm going to throw out to, this time I'm going to actually assign it to Torah first. But if you have a game that you want to bring your significant other into, if you want them to join you in that game, what are some ways you can sort of integrate them into that?
Like if you have an existing campaign that you're playing in, when you start seeing someone, or if you want to bring them into the game, how would you approach that?
I'm probably not the right person to ask. Carrinn?
The thing is, we have so many groups going. If Sean were going to start a new thing, or I were going to start a new thing, we would just begin a new thing with them in the first place. Because we have several groups from which to draw to put together just the right mix for X, Y, or Z.
Like you're already playing in a campaign, and like the reason why I wanted this, I put this one in the show notes myself. That's why I'm the one that keeps clarifying everything. Is one of the things that was like if you start dating someone who is also a gamer, and you've got your campaign, they've got their campaign that they're playing, but you're wanting to play together. Would it be better off for one of you to join the other campaign, or to just start something completely new?
I think it would be better that you just took turns. play that person's campaign one week and play the other person's campaign the next week or something like that. At least to start off with, see how it goes.
You've worked me into one of your existing campaigns.
Yeah.
And it was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, when we first got together, Sean worked me into one that he was running. I took over somebody's NPC sidekick.
Yeah. There's always somebody hanging around.
And the reason why I want to talk about this is this is another problem I've had where it's, if you're just starting to date someone, there's always that pressure when you're meeting their friends and their social group. And one of the things I really wanted to talk about a little bit is, would that sort of pressure be lessened or increased by having the game there? Because you're interacting with them and you've got the game as sort of this tool for social interaction, but you're also joining people who all know each other. They've been playing this game for a while.
That could be hard as the newcomer, yeah. I mean, maybe in that kind of situation, it would be better to start a brand new game for both of you.
I guess it depends on, what your feelings are. If you feel like you are going to be under a lot of pressure, the other person should take that into account and, start a new game.
I think Carrinn had a really great point earlier. She said it always depends on your group, and that is definitely true. But, like, for example, I have a gaming group right now that I'm all very good friends with, and if I was going to bring my girlfriend into that gaming group, I would feel a lot more comfortable about that than opposed to a group I didn't know nearly as well. The social dynamic is always going to be different
That's how you feel, but how would your girlfriend feel?
Right.
Well, I'm just saying, like, if I'm considering whether it would be better for one or the other, I would have to take that into account as, whether whether the group I think would be a good fit or not, I guess is what I'm saying.
Always true, yeah.
Now, this is a question I think we'll throw to Carrinn, actually. So you play in a group that's almost entirely couples, is that right?
Mm-hmm. One of the groups is, yeah.
And what's different about that group than other groups that you may have been a part of?
Quite frankly, it's more cohesive.
In what way?
Everyone is more comfortable being and inhabiting their characters because they know, yes, I have my solid significant other, that what happens in game is not going to screw with that. And we have a lot of crossplay at times, depending on which campaign it is. By crossplay, I mean guys playing girls, girls playing guys, etc. And we have actually had instances of couple A and couple B. One half of couple A and one half of couple B, their characters being a couple.
And well, that's a really interesting point. So it sounds like what you're saying is because they have such a strong bond outside of the game that they feel more comfortable sort of expressing themselves in different ways in that group.
Yeah. It might have had something to do with the fact that my character's fiance, male character, was played by another woman. Who then wound up going out in a blaze of glory when it was determined that she didn't... Well, there was just a situation of leaving the game, and so the character went out in a spectacular fashion, all heroic and stuff.
I would expect nothing less from Shintar.
Indeed. And the character that I had been playing wound up getting benched because she's now carrying the heir to his noble line, as well as herself being, and it gets very complicated.
Well, it sounds really super cool. I think that sounds like the kind of group. Although I would not have a couple to bring to that party, I think it sounds like a type of game I would really enjoy. Bruce and Torah, how do you guys feel about something like a couples only game night or something like that?
That sounds fun. I mean, we don't really restrict it. I don't know that we would go out looking for couples only, but if it were to happen to fall that way, that'd be fine.
I wonder if there's more sort of motivation for couples to show up for the game. Like if one evening, you don't feel like it, but she really does, and so you end up going. I don't know that that's true, but I know that with adults, a lot of things get kind of can intrude if you let them. So
that's a really good point.
Yeah.
So Torah, if I understand what you're saying correctly, you're thinking that maybe couples bring more stability to a gaming group because of that.
I don't know that. I don't want to slander my single friends. But perhaps.
Well, okay, no, I think it's a really excellent point, because I would absolutely agree with you that stability, like, people coming in and out, that's something you have to deal with, especially, as Bruce says, when you're playing with adults. There's always things that come up. There's family, kids, dogs. And whatever happens, sometimes there's going to be a time when you're going to say, "I'm sorry, my whatever I'm doing in real life is going to have to take precedence here." But I do definitely I see where Tor's coming from too, where it might be a case of, if it's really important, and we talked about this earlier about how gaming is such a big part of our lives. But if it's really important to both of you, maybe that means that they make that couples might make an extra effort, where single people might not have the same motivation.
There's also the aspect of, if one half of the couple is not feeling up to gaming on a given night, the other half can play their character as an ally.
Because there's that bond of trust, and you're totally fine with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know that your partner is not going to completely screw over your character.
It's not going to be a Knights of the Dinner Table situation where it's, oh yeah, you came back this week, but you gave your +3 armor to my character, and then you dove in front of the Beholder's eye beam to save her character. And
what do you mean I ran through the dungeon naked? Yeah, that's another great point.
But there's one thing I was kind of wondering about. I've spent more time, I have spent a lot of time gaming when I was in a relationship. I'm currently single, and ladies, and I had to make sure my bass was turned up on the mixer when I said that, but get that nice.
Be like, ladies.
But I've also spent a lot of time single gaming with couples, and I kind of think it might be advantageous if if you're a couple and you're wanting to game, and a couple, they're also gamers, you want to game with them, to kind of do just everyone at the table's a couple, instead of having, okay, this couple's playing, and then the single person's there as the fifth wheel on the double date.
Well, I think what you're saying is, it's advantageous to have as many couples as possible, but not to exclude single players.
Or to...
It's optimal if it's couples, but it's okay to have single players.
It's not a bad thing, but it, like I said, does add a little bit of social awkwardness to it if you're the only single person at the table full of people who are kind of making lovey-dovey eyes at each other over the battle mat.
Well, I guess that depends on how long they've been together.
Very good point there, thinking back.
I'm just puzzled at lovey-dovey eyes over the battle mat. No, if the battle mat is being a battle mat, then no, there's no lovey-dovey eyes. It's get him, kill him, hurt him, squash him. You don't really mean to him.
Now I want to make a movie with that title. Well, we want to make sure and extend our grateful thanks to Bruce Cordell and Torah Cottrill for joining us tonight. Thank you so much for coming on the show, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much. And although Torah's not going to say it, it's Cottrill.
I'm sorry.
No,
I apologize.
You got Torah right, though. That's good.
Yeah. And thanks very much for having us.
If you want to just tell
a very fun
about your latest thing before you go and where they can find that.
Sure. Yeah. You know what? I think I've already talked about a lot of stuff, but I'll say this: MontyCookGames.com is going to open the store tomorrow. In my time as I'm recording this, but by the time this podcast is up, the store should be open, and actually, we're going to have some sort of promotion, and it should be very exciting. And I'm very excited to have it open.
Is the bestiary available yet?
Oh, right, and the bestiary is going to be available tomorrow. The Numenera bestiary.
That's officially. I was about to say that's officially the first thing you worked on for Monty Cook, isn't it?
It's the first hardcover. I've done a couple small glimmers, but it's probably. I feel like it's the best thing I've written in years, and put together with all this wonderful art and graphic design. I think it's a fabulous product.
It's beautiful. It really is.
So yeah, that's what I'd like to promote right now. The Ninth World Bestiary. Thanks, Tor.
It is. It's fantastic.
Brilliant. Well, we'll look forward to seeing it. And
Tor, did you have anything you wanted to pimp or social media or anything?
Please look for By Fairy Light by Broken Eye Books. It's fantastic.
It is. I agree. It's filled with great stories. Torah's story is one of the best, but it has many, many great stories.
Many great stories.
All right, we'll have that link in the show notes.
Carrinn, it's nice to meet you. And Daryl and Ross, thank you so much for hosting. This has been very fun.
Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for you guys showing up, man.
Bye.
Fan of your work.
Don't think you have enough time to read the latest book? Well, you've got time to listen to us every week, so why not listen to your favorite books with Audible? Their library of over 150,000 audiobooks is the largest on the internet, all professionally produced with talented readers. Click on the link in the show notes at gamerstavern.org to get a 30-day free trial, including a free audiobook. Or, do you already know you want to subscribe now and don't need a trial? Then you can get your first 3 months half off for only $7.49. Catch up on Game of Thrones before the new season, reread the old Dragonlance series, or refresh yourself on the classic cyberpunk stories from William Gibson and Neil Stephenson. Sign up for Audible today by clicking on the link in the show notes at gamerstavern.org.
And we're back with episode 19 of the Gamers Tavern. And unfortunately, Bruce and Torah had to leave us to do some things. So it's now just Daryl, myself, and Carrinn to continue the discussion of romance at the game table.
Yeah, it was something about taking a secret portal to some other world, and
it was definitely an enigmatic and unusual world. You might even say it was strange. Arcane, abstruse, difficult to understand.
Thank you. You have no idea how many times people don't get that that's an actual English word.
Well, of course.
It drives me nuts. Especially when people mispronounce. It's usually typos. They leave the S out. Obtuse. I'm like,
you mean like obtuse?
I get that insult a lot, but I'm just like, yeah, it's like the Daryl and your other, my brother Daryl and my other brother Daryl. Yeah, I haven't heard that one before.
You know, I knew this guy who was fairly pretentious, and he liked to use a lot of words to describe how good of a writer he was. And it always amused me because he liked to try and, play himself up as almost like an Oscar Wilde type, very, sort of edgy and
So you knew me in college?
One of the words this guy used to describe how great his writing was insipid. He said, my writing is wicked and insipid, and I'm like, I don't.
Wow.
I do not think that means what you think it means.
So there you go.
Oh, hi.
Yes. Anyway.
Maybe he was just having an acute attack of honesty.
Would not surprise me. How about that? Okay, so I think maybe one of the best things we could do now that we're talking to Carrinn, we should shift gears a little bit and talk about finding a partner who games.
Well, if you're lucky, your partner to be will have gone on a quest and go on podcast.
Why don't you tell us about that? Because that's a great story to tell.
Well, after the failure of his second marriage, he decided that he needed to find a gamer girl.
We're talking about Sean Fannin right now.
Yes, as opposed to just a girl. So he went on a capital Q quest to find, and I quote, the gamer girl of his dreams.
The one.
Yes. And I won. He had talked to blogs, he had talked to podcasters, and there were a few that had been planning to have him on, but something delayed one of them, and he wasn't able to go on there before we got together. But on All Games Considered, with the episode that released on December 7th of 2008, not that I'm keeping track or anything. My roommate at the time was an avid podcast listener. I mean, you name it, he listened to it.
Make sure you get his email address for us after the show.
Yes, please.
he called me in to hear this crazy guy who was looking for a gamer girl of his dreams, and unbeknownst to me, he was joking when he said, "You ought to email him." I didn't know he was joking. I'd only heard part of the podcast, so I went to the office and downloaded it and listened to the whole thing top to bottom, and then went and looked at the show notes and the the picture gallery that Sean had included. Some were complimentary, some not so much. And then I read the open letter to she who would share happily ever after with me, and promptly fell in love with his brain. At the time, I was still a smoker, I was in the process of quitting, but he was very much adamant that was not something he could deal with. So I thought that my chances were zip. But I thought that it was a great idea and wanted this awesome guy to be happy. But I could not reach out to him. So I emailed him. I friended him on LiveJournal. I created my Facebook account in order to friend him. I'll make a long story short, I went stalker, but in a good way.
Now, Carrinn, I need to ask you a question, because this is just a wonderful story. I do love it. But I've always wondered, is there any one specific thing you can say that really spoke to you about his quest? The one thing that made you decide, I've got to talk to him.
The way he put it all out there, the good, the bad, the indifferent, rather than just putting best foot forward, he opted to be real, to show the not so happy, shiny side, as well as the happy, shiny side. Right down to the fact that he gets man colds. If you have never seen that comedy sketch,
I have not.
Look it up on YouTube. It's hilarious.
For listeners who may not have seen it, what's the basic breakdown of that?
Oh, guy sick on the couch, being all pathetic. Girl still sick, taking care of him, about to go out to work. And Laura. Just being very pathetic.
Oh, okay.
And a little bell that she had given him, and she hadn't answered promptly enough, so he called 999. It's an English thing, so which would be the equivalent of us calling 911.
Yeah.
And this team of emergency people comes in. Don't you understand, woman? He has a man cold.
Okay.
And again, I'm not doing it justice. It's one of those things. Just look it up on YouTube.
I'll make sure to include it in the show notes.
So you're saying
the not so good along with the good. But the fact that he's genuine.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's fair to say. That takes a lot of bravery.
Goofy.
What was the second part there?
And that he was not afraid to be goofy.
Mm.
Just he was a real three-dimensional individual person, not this cardboard cutout what guys think girls want.
So you're saying
he was an actual human being.
He had the courage to kind of show you everything. That's what.
Yeah.
Okay. That does take a lot of bravery to put it all out there, I think. So I can see what you're saying. And
he was so well spoken, well written in that. And like I said, I fell in love with his brain.
Now, was the fact that you were both gamers, was that, did that come into play at all? Was that something you were like, oh, and this is a bonus?
Well, actually, that was another place that I was really concerned, because I didn't get to start gaming until I was a widow. I didn't get to start gaming until I was 30. So I had only been gaming for like a year, maybe year and a half at that point. So I was concerned that I didn't have enough game for him.
Well, but would you have classified yourself as a non-gamer, though, when you guys got together?
No, because
Okay.
I had my regular gaming group.
So even though you were new, you kind of jumped in both feet, sort of,
Right.
when it came to gaming.
And the thing is, I wanted to start gaming when I was 16, but did not have access to transportation at the time when people were actually having the games. So I had to make do with the electronic variety up until that point, like from 16 to 30, whether it be console or MMO or whatever. It wasn't until I was 30 that I got to start actually rolling the dice.
So if someone were to come to you and say, I am interested in finding a partner who is also a gamer, what would you say to them?
Be a game designer, write a blog, and be on every podcast begging for a girlfriend. Apparently, that's the lesson I've taken. By the way, if there are any single women in the Southeast Texas area, while I'm on a podcast,
I don't think there are any single women in Texas. Wait, no, that's wrong.
Well, you're off to a good start. You're letting it be known that you're looking for someone.
yeah. Well,
And don't necessarily limit yourself geographically. I was living in Alabama. He was living in Tennessee and working in Atlanta. So it's kind of a same general within 4 hours any one direction, but
yeah. This is also Texas. You drive 4 hours in one direction, you're not even halfway across the state. You've gone through one major city.
I've driven across it.
So you're saying the most important part is to make it known, and the second most important part is don't limit yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I typically realize that ours is a very unusual situation, but also don't expect it to be instantaneous. Because, I mean, it was several months that the blogs were going before the podcast came out. And there had been other people who he had gone out with, but it just hadn't quite been the right fit. So
Okay. I would have to imagine that if someone were listening to our podcast about romance and gaming, at least one of those people is going to be asking themselves, how do I find my one? And I just thought that would be a good question to bring up for you.
And one thing I would have to say about that is, honestly,
don't be afraid to roll your dice.
Don't forget to roll the dice.
because
Critical hit on my heart.
that might be a better episode title. But I've had a lot of experience in both sides of starting relationships and getting my gaming involved. One thing that I make clear right up front, anytime I start even talking to someone, flirting with whatever, it's like, oh, hey, by the way, I'm a giant ass nerd. I love games. I play role-playing games. I play tabletop games. I play card games. This is before I was actually, kind of professionally involved in the writing about them doing the podcast. I would sit up and write up front, hey, this is me. I'm a nerd. If you can handle that, there are plenty other guys hanging around. So that's one thing you don't want to try to hide who you are. Not necessarily saying sit there and go on a 3-hour monologue about your character from 9th grade or anything like that on the first date, but you also want to make it clear exactly who you are and what it is you're looking for. And
if it's the right one, being a nerd will be, hey, bonus.
Yes. And that's one thing I wanted to bring up is I really think that you should focus more on finding the person that's right for you, not necessarily saying, I want a gamer girl. For Sean, that worked out very well. He happened to find both in the same package. But for me, gaming is a huge part of my life, but it's also not the only thing I'm into. And I wouldn't reject someone solely because they weren't a gamer either. Because
they could be converted.
Exactly.
Let's be clear. I think we're not saying that if you're a gamer, your only hope is to get someone who is or can be converted into a gamer, because that's not true. I mean, there's no reason in the world why you couldn't fall in love with someone who just isn't into gaming and will never be.
Right.
I'm not saying that's optimal.
I just don't understand it.
I'm not saying it's optimal, but I just want to be clear that we're not, that our position is, what's best for you, right? Not. I just didn't want our listeners to get the impression that's what we were saying.
Don't artificially continue. She has to play games all the time. She must love gaming as much as I do, because that would be like saying, I want someone who has a body that looks like this. It's completely superficial. I've known many gaming people, both male and female, who are really nice, awesome people. Most of them are. I've known a handful, both male and female, who are complete and utter dicks.
Yeah.
So I actually had to, I was kind of talking to someone about gaming. We hit it off kind of well starting off. And we spent a lot of time talking about different games we liked and things like that. And then I found out, oh my God, she is an absolutely horrible person. So that didn't go very far after that, whenever I had that realization.
No amount of geekdom can make up for being a jerk.
Exactly.
So, well, you were about to say something about a podcast we'd done earlier with, I believe, Nicole Wakelin.
That's exactly the one I was going to bring up. Episode 8, Gaming with the Family. Both the first half and second episode.
Fangirl.
Exactly. We talked a lot about gateway games and how to get people who may not be gamers to give it a shot. So if that's something, if you're with someone or if you're interested in someone or if you meet someone who isn't into gaming, that's a good episode to start with listening to get ideas of how you might introduce your hobby to them and see if they're interested. Well, the most important thing though is do not force it down their throat. Don't make it seem like you must play in my weekly D&D game or else we can't date.
Well, I'm kind of interested to hear what Carrinn would say if we put that question to her about, let's say I have a partner who is not a gamer. How do I bring my significant other, what's the best way to get my significant other interested or convert them, as you say, convert them into a game?
Well, find out, what are their interests? And there are so many different types of games out there. Surely somewhere there will be a crossover. If the significant other is a comic book geek, there's superhero role-playing. There's things like Sentinels of the Multiverse. Is
it possible that Sean is working on a game that might be of interest to comic book players?
It's possible, yes. Very distinct possibility there.
As I was saying, he has brought that up publicly already, that he's working on another superhero game.
Yeah, but that's on the back burner until more of the Shinetar product gets flowing, since that lovely Kickstarter that we love and hate. or maybe that's just me.
I don't know, Ross. What's your relationship with Kickstarter right now while we're talking about relationships?
Well, I think it's really important to point out that Sean and I are actually working together on a couple of things because the Accursed Trio, that is myself and John Dunn and Jason Marker, have agreed to write a adventure for Shinetar. And
oh God, the Leechmen, I hate you so much. Thank you.
Well, that is directly my fault. The Leechmen were totally mine, 100%. So, yeah.
Note how I phrased that. I hate you so much. Thank you.
You can blame me for the Leechmen. But yeah, and then Sean is going to return the favor. He's going to write an adventure for Accursed. So, I think this, and I brought this up in the awards show when I nominated Shinetar, as I was kind of bending the rules in that I was sort of kind of associated with it. But I am really just super glad that Kickstarter succeeded and that the things are moving forward with that. And I just want to make sure we don't get too far off topic because we were talking about how to bring someone into gaming who is our significant other who does not game. So you were bringing up the idea of looking into their common interests. Things like comic books might lead them into playing superheroes. Maybe if they like fantasy fiction, they might like D&D or something like that. Or Shinetar.
Or Shinetar. Yeah. Another thing is, does he or she paint? Have they considered miniatures?
Oh, I would kill for a girlfriend who would paint my minis for me.
I've actually known quite a few that do that. But also, I'm going to point out that right now is a wonderful time to get people, especially into fantasy gaming, because there's the Lord of the Rings movies, the Hobbit movies, there's the Game of Thrones television series. Everywhere you look these days, there's, fantasy.
Oh, crap. What just got licensed? Some other big fantasy series just got licensed.
The Mistborn? No?
I didn't hear about that one. No, it's, I want to say it was one of Terry Brooks's. Not Terry Brooks. Terry Brooks.
Shannara?
I think so. I'm not entirely sure.
That sounds right.
Okay, well, look it up.
But it sounds right.
We'll put it in the show notes. But the point I'm getting at is it's easier than ever now, I would say, to find some common vector to bring someone into gaming because of all the things that are in our culture right now. Would you agree with that, Carrinn?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And there are so many different varieties of gaming. I mean, it's not just RPGs. There's also the card gaming, board gaming. There's also the electronic variety. But really, there is as much out there as you are willing to look for.
Well, let's turn the tables a little bit. Let's instead talk about this, because I also know this is also a thing. What if you have a certain, let's say, Carrinn, you're the GM, okay? And let's say you have me, for example, in your gaming group, and I say to you, my wife, she does not want to game. She's not really interested in it. What are some ways I can keep my gaming from becoming an issue?
Find out the degree of her interest, or rather lack thereof.
Right, because if I'm a gamer, I'm spending a lot of time, 4 to 8 hours is not an insignificant amount of time to be spending away from, the home situation and being in a couple, right? I mean, you'd agree with that.
Yeah.
So it's not just, we're not saying this is a minor thing you can gloss over. I mean, sometimes this is a kind of a sticking point, right? So
yeah, we have a friend who he might get to game twice a year.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's kind of a big deal when he does get to.
So so what would you say to him if he were to say, what are some ways I can, what are some things I can do to make sure that this does not get any worse, or to make it better?
In that specific situation, it's more a case of where is the quid pro quo, what to provide for her that she will then provide the time for him to go do that. And there are some couplings that I do not understand. Very sweet lady, but I do not understand having a problem with gaming. And here it comes down to just a lack of comprehension of the mindset.
Okay. Well, I think
that said, for example, a lot of conventions do a widow's track with spa crap and food.
Oh yeah, there's Gen Con has a particular spousal room, I believe, set up.
The widow/widowers room, where it's crafting and spa days and stuff like that, I believe.
I was also going to say Geek Nation Tours, when they do their Gen Con, and whenever they do a convention tour, they always include a separate track of events for non-gamers who may be accompanying gamers on the tour. So yeah, there is usually alternatives.
So maybe if your significant other is a rabid anti-gamer, if you want to game, maybe bribe with a pedicure or a gift certificate to a spa or some crap. I don't know.
Learn how to foot rub.
Yeah, something like that. But no, I mean something that could be done at the same time.
Right.
If you let me have if you let me have my weekly game night, you can have your girls' night out.
Exactly.
So in that case, you're saying about
bring for a babysitter if that's an issue.
What about you, Daryl? What would you suggest as some ways to keep gaming from being an issue if the partner is not interested?
Well, I think Carrinn hit a lot of the key points of it's. She was kind of dancing around communication, figure out exactly what it is that they don't like about gaming. If they are worried that for whatever reason, this is going to become an obsession, you're never going to talk to me anymore, never going to see me anymore, you really need to make sure to make it clear to them that no, that you're the most important thing in my life. This is just something I really love to do, and it's not something you want to do, so I'm not going to force it on you, but I still want to keep doing this thing. It's just like pretty much any other hobby. You hear all the time talking about sports widows. They're going out to the game every week and to watch sports. So
that's the one I wouldn't get. Total lack of appeal.
Yeah, and it's all a matter of communication. Find out what it is that they don't like, what it is that they're worried about gaming, or if it's just the fact that, hey, this isn't my thing. Just make it. You have to be very, very clear that you're still making time for them. You still have your time together as a couple, as a family. even if you go off and do this thing by yourself.
Another possibility is that the significant other in question just doesn't know enough about it. So even if she has no interest in joining in, maybe invite her to just come and watch, hang out. Include her in your thing without forcing her to do your thing.
And if you're worried that it might be uncomfortable to have her just kind of like sitting there staring at the game while it's going on, there's also, at this point in time, on YouTube, there are hundreds of videos of people playing games. You can pull up episodes of Will Wheaton's Tabletop. You can, I may not recommend the Acquisition Incorporated games because they're all like in costumes and on stage and stuff, and that's not exactly the impression you want to give someone who's not a gamer.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're all dressing up in costumes and standing around making dick jokes? I'm like, the professional comics on stage at a convention are doing that. That's not what we're doing. Unless that's what you're doing at your game, which is perfectly fine.
And I honestly, this is something I have personally encountered. I had a Shadowrun gaming group back in Louisville, and a good friend of mine, he had gotten engaged, and his fiance wanted to come join, see what was going on, and she wanted to be part of the game. And she showed up, and it was very obvious that she was not interested. She was like, I'm doing this because it's something that he does, and I'm here. And it was kind of unpleasant for everyone, because we were all like, we tried, I want to say that we were gentlemen, and we tried to accommodate and get her to join us, But this was a really long time ago, so it's possible that I'm forgetting some things that made it even more awkward than it really was. But
that's plenty awkward enough, dude.
All I'm saying is I've been there, That's, I guess, really all I want to do.
Mike said, you kind of have to make sure that they actually have at least some interest in it before you try to force it on them. That's why I was recommending the gateway games. If you're wanting to take your time, slowly introduce the hobby to them, and you might be surprised with what they're interested in. They may have absolutely no desire to play D&D whatsoever at all, even though they're big Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones fans. They just don't care about D&D, don't want anything to do with D&D. But if you lay out, say, Ticket to Ride or Suro or something like that, they may be completely into that.
Well, I'm actually going to bring this back to something Carrinn brought up earlier. Can you tell, I'm just curious, can you tell us the story of that first game you played with Sean, and maybe that'll give us some insight into...
Well, actually, that wasn't the first game that I played with him. The first game that I played with him was our first date.
Okay. Can you tell that story?
Sure. He had a regular Thursday night group, which was a Mutants and Mastermind 2nd edition game. And he was all set to cancel and take me on a, quote, real date, unquote, whatever that is. And I said...
Dinner and a movie, it's boring. You can't actually talk because either you're watching the movie or your mouth's full.
And my response was, no, I want to play too. At which point he said he knew that's when I was the one.
Now, was Sean a player or a GM in this group?
Player. So he contacted the GM and arranged for when we arrived. We took a pre-gen from the book and tweaked it slightly. The situation was they were this was like C squad or C string supers going to, because all of the big ones had been whisked away somewhere, and my character in that game was one of those who had been whisked away. But she had been there for a while, and she kind of got a bit touched in the head. But it went fairly awesomely. Everyone was very warm and welcoming, and it was just a really great way to meet more of his crowd of friends, one of whom is now a coworker of mine. We both work for Drive-Thru RPG. That first date it made me feel very welcome that he and his group were willing to allow me the chance to join in.
So do you think that worked better than if you had gone, say, dinner and dancing sort of thing to get to know him?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No question about it.
Do you think that would have been different if he had been actually running the game?
I don't know, because the other game that I was talking about, where I took over one of the other characters' NPC sidekick, I never really inhabited that character, but it allowed me a chance to dip my foot in the pool, as it were, of his GMing style and his world that I then fell in love with. So it was very much, again, a case of being incredibly grateful that he and his group of friends were willing to welcome me into that already existent game.
Anything?
So, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you think that possibly being able to get that window into both his normal social interactions as well as kind of get a peek at where his head is in his fantasy world may have helped out some in getting to know him?
Yes, absolutely. Especially now with Sean, you have to keep in mind, gaming is his life. It is the day job. It is the hobby. It is the love life. It is the passion. It is his life. And likewise, it is my life. And Spawn is also gamer. She started when she was 9, and that was the incentive for her to learn math. Was you're not allowed to play until you're willing to do the math. So
I actually saw that one happen as well. With I was dating someone, and she had a son who was about that age, and he just could not stand math, didn't want anything to do with math. He couldn't figure out how to do, like, adding and subtracting multiples, like more than 1 or 2 digits. And he could not figure that out. And I'm like, and he didn't have any desire to learn. I'm like, dude, you see these games we're playing? As soon as you figure this out, you can join us, because that's all we're doing is adding and subtracting big numbers. And then I gave him an analogy that involved crates of Batman action figures, and he kind of got it, I think.
awesome.
So,
well, I do credit Dungeons & Dragons for, when I was a child, giving me access to an incredible vocabulary, from things like dice to melee to shillelagh.
My only problem is I don't know how to pronounce half those words because I've only ever read them.
Well, I still mispronounce words on this very podcast.
Including names.
So, including names. So, you know what? You're never going to learn unless you say it out loud, and then somebody will correct you, and then you say, thank you for correcting me. But, okay, so Carrinn, I guess, so, as you know, this show is going to be coming out right before Valentine's Day.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us some suggestions or ideas or stories of things that you may have seen yourself that gamers can do for their significant other on this special day? Or even for anniversaries or birthdays. You know, that's fair game, too.
Dice make great gifts. Miniatures. One thing I'm planning to do and have ready for him when he gets back from Genghis Khan is, and I just got the pieces in today. I'm so stoked.
Okay, Sean, if you're listening to this over the weekend, make sure to skip ahead about 45 seconds to a minute and a half so you don't spoil the surprise.
Nah, the thrill will be the visual of it. Did you know that O-scale railroad stuff is right at the right size for 25 to 28 mil gaming figs?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Oh, yes. I've been acquiring O-scale buildings, and I just got a load of furniture and one of the figures I need for bashing. But I'm going to be creating sets, as it were, for specific places in Shintar and in some of his other universes.
Ooh.
That is very exciting.
So he's going to come home and see models set up of the maps he's drawn or commissioned?
Well, more like finally making use of some of Tom Tullis's Fat Dragon, combining the cardstock terrain with the Plasticville stuff in to where it gives actual interiors to the structures.
Cool.
Nice.
Now, I think one last thing I would say about this is that, and because we are definitely speaking to the adults in the audience here for this one, but one particular advantage of having a significant other who is also a gamer is that sometimes role-playing does not need to stop at the table, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, you remember I mentioned the all-female group wherein part of the group was a couple?
Uh-huh.
A large chunk of their activities,
character development, shall we say?
were role-play oriented.
The guy who has the mouth of a sailor on the podcast is the one that's sitting here blushing right now. For the record.
Listen, there's nothing
one
wrong with
line
it's
from
very,
one of
very
them was
healthy
that
sometimes.
the only man that one of them would ever love existed in her wife's head.
But I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that if that's what you're into. I'm not saying if I am or am not into that myself. I'm just a shy person when it comes to that subject matter.
Oh, I will just go ahead and say that any ladies out there who don't mind dressing up as Wonder Woman from time to time, that is a huge bonus.
You do know about the creator of that comic, right?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, he was the guy who invented the polygraph.
That's true. So that's going to bring us up to
Which is
last
an
call.
interesting subject in and of itself.
Yeah. That's going to bring us up to last call. So, Carrinn, why don't you tell us again where we can find you on the internet and what you and Sean are up to, and any last words you might have on this subject.
Okay. If you happen to go to shinetar.com, I am available there as Salasia, who, if you are familiar with the world, is the Silver Unicorn's actual name. Sean appears there as Sudarin the Raven. I'm on Facebook under my name. Mostly I'm just doing editing, both for Shinetar and I have done some other editing work. And I'm customer service, part of the customer service team for Drive-Thru RPG, RPG Now, Wargame Vault, etc.
D&D Classics.
The One Bookshelf team.
Yep. Yes, the One Bookshelf team.
Which, if you have not checked out, you can always click on our affiliate link at gamerstavern.org and go to the website and find all sorts of amazing games.
And if you ever happen to be wandering around Shinetar and run into an old knight by the name of Sir Stephen Draugersbane, that is, in fact, Ross Watson. And that is my character that I have played in Shinetar 3 times now. So,
is he your Justice in Life character?
I am going to play my first game of Justice in Life at Genghis Khan, actually. So
awesome.
I guess I will. I have a bad habit of not carrying my character sheet around with me, so I kind of end up remaking them.
That's why Shinetar.com exists.
Yes, exactly. So
you can put your JNL character up there.
So I will need to get in. Clearly, what I need to do after this podcast is get in touch with Sean and work out Sir Stefan and make sure that he's all set up, and then put him on that website so that when I play with him again at Genghis Khan, I can just say, there he is, and we can now keep track of him without me having to carry him around in a special folder or something.
Yeah, that would work nicely.
Okay, very cool. I think I'm actually at the level where I'm going to get a miniature of him at some point, so I'm kind of excited about that.
Ooh.
Have you submitted your description of him?
I certainly have.
Okay. Because guess what idiot is going to be making all of those miniatures?
Well, I understood it was going to be you making the miniatures.
Yes.
So I'm excited about it. All right.
That's a lot of miniatures I have ahead of me.
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you so much for coming on the show with us, Carrinn, and please tell Sean that we really appreciate what he's doing as well, because he's out helping Doctors Without Borders right now.
Yes, I am so incredibly proud of him, both for the work he has done organizing fundraising efforts for them in the past when he was with One Bookshelf, and now coming in to help them more directly.
So that is super cool. And once again, just thank you so much for coming on Gamers Tavern and sharing with us all these great stories about romance at the game table.
Thank you.
So that about wraps things up for the Gamers Tavern this week. It's been far too long, so let's read some listener comments. We've got from the Grumpy Celt, referencing our Gamers Tavern Lifetime Achievement Award winner, Knights of the Dinner Table, and their successful Kickstarter for their live-action web series. Quote, I am surprised you did not mention it, but 2 of the actors in the Knights of the Dinner Table show are also stars in Darkness Rising and Journey Quest. Well, Grumpy, I'm damn near face blind when it comes to actors if they're not in the same makeup. I still keep saying, why does that guy look so familiar every single time Viggo Mortensen shows up in a non-Lord of the Rings movie, and I've seen Lord of the Rings literally hundreds of times. So, not my fault there. But Ross is a huge Darkness Rising fan, and he's not here, so I'm going to blame him. It's all his fault. We also got an email from Lauren Lance, who said, just heard about your podcast today on Reddit. Love it! Didn't know of an RPG podcast until then, so I'm so stoked. Also, playing with mechs. Fuck yeah! I need to do this now. I love the idea of Audrey. Flawed characters are so much fun to play. Reminded me of the time I played a Void-born scum character in Dark Heresy. She was 15 and had all the flaws of a teenage girl and the neuroses of basically being a bilge rat. Reading this, I'm technically kind of cheating because this is actually the opening to Lauren's contest entry, which you can hear more about our contest after the outro here. But, so yeah, I just had to read this because of a couple of things. One, I did not remember Audrey for the longest time until I was reading this just now, and I remembered Audrey the plant that Jason Marker was talking about on that episode which is our giant robots episode. So yeah, I completely remember that now, and it was really kind of cool. So yeah, I'm very happy you're enjoying the podcast, and I'm kind of thrilled we're your first role-playing game podcast, because there are a lot of podcasts out there. There are some really, really good ones. One I would highly recommend, not the least of which because someone on that show has been a guest on our show, but I would highly recommend the D6 Generation podcast. They release an episode about once every 2 or 3 weeks, but it's like 3.5 hours long, so it really makes up for it. And total fangirl Nicole Wakelin on that show has been on our show before in our family and gaming episode, which is another, we actually referenced that earlier in the podcast. So yeah, definitely check out that episode. Definitely check out D6 Generation. There's a lot of other good role-playing game podcasts out there, but please keep listening. We're very, very thrilled that you love the show, and please note that your gushing does not increase your chances of winning the contest. Like all of our contests, unless specifically stated otherwise, we're going to take all the entries, put them in an old school RPG table, and roll a die to determine who wins, because it's a tribute to mine and Ross's old school gaming roots. So we have one more comment, which is actually, it was an iTunes review we got, which is a 5-star review. Thank you very much. We need more reviews on iTunes, please. But I honestly do not know how old this is, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But there is a very, very good point that this user raises, and I'm not sure if it's a he or she, and I'm also not entirely sure how to pronounce the name, because it's one of those usernames. I'm going to try. Deepak Viper. And if I butchered that, I apologize, but he or she says, I discovered this when the Shadowrun episode was tweeted about, and have since listened to them all. I like the diversity of topics, the guests, the discussions. The crowd sounds, however, make it very hard to hear anything spoken about at that time. I know it's for theme, but the volume needs to be lowered or something so that the actual speakers can be heard and understood. Now, there's 2 reasons why I'm not exactly sure exactly when this was posted. A lot of that comment leads me to believe it was back when we posted episode 7, which was our Shadowrun episode with John Dunn and Russell Zimmerman, where we talked about Shadowrun. But it may have also been, we got a little bit of a flurry about our new podcast we're about to start doing, but I'll get to that in a moment. I really want to address the crowd noise thing, because that is a very, very valid concern that we've if you haven't noticed in the last dozen or so episodes, we've already addressed that. Back when I started Gamers Tavern, I had a completely different idea for how things would go. I thought I would be hosting the show, and it would be just everyone drinking and talking about games, no structure, no nothing. I brought Ross on board to be co-host, and it was absolutely the best possible move I could have made for this podcast. Ross is utterly awesome. He's the guy that kind of pushed me away from going too far into those trappings. It took me way too long to realize that Ross is a lot better at the on-air thing than I am. I kind of actually wish he was the one recording all these little intros and outros that we do, because he's just that much better at it than I am. But I'm editing these things late at night. He's probably just landing in Colorado right now, which is something else I'm going to talk about in a moment. But yeah, Ross is awesome. He's the one that kind of moved us away from that. I still wanted that really atmosphere. I wanted you to feel like you were sitting at a table in a corner of a tavern, sitting with me and Ross and these game designers and just talking about gaming. And I was so focused on that theme, and I was so new to the concept of audio editing that a lot of those episodes sound like shit because of it. I just didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to balance levels properly. I didn't have proper monitors to hear. Yeah, those early episodes, I'm not proud of how they sound. I'm proud of the content. We've got some great guests who have brought some great points to every topic we've done, and we're probably going to revisit a lot of those topics again so we can get more in depth into them again and bring a lot of those guests back as well. Not necessarily for the same topics, but but yeah, I got rid of the background noise of the all that noise. I did away with that for a different reason than I probably should have. Laziness. I don't know if you've noticed from how we're talking, but we are now recording about 2 weeks in advance at this point. So when we're recording an episode, that episode doesn't go live for like 2.5 weeks after we record it. But all these things I tend to record like the day before. Like, I'm recording this, and then I'm going to export it, and then I'm dropping it in the episode, and then I'm uploading the episode. So, yeah, that's a little bit of a different thing there. But, yeah, those effects didn't go away because it went away because I was pushing the deadlines so close for editing these things that I didn't want to mess with it anymore. So I just left it out for a couple episodes, and now it's just gone completely. And I kind of miss some of those atmospheric things, but listening to some of the older podcasts again, yeah, I didn't know what I was doing when it came to audio editing. The levels were horrible. The background noise was drowning out the people talking, and that's unacceptable. So now that I have a better idea of what I'm doing, and now that I've upgraded our sound equipment yet again, we're about to actually completely revamp the entire structure again of how we record these shows to improve quality and make a better podcast for you, our listeners, and to make it easier on me to edit them. But yeah, I'm rambling at this point. I'm sorry. Anyway, yeah, those effects are gone. We lost a lot of the trappings of being in a tavern, but we kept enough of them that I think the feel and the style that I really wanted from the start of things is actually more there than when I was kind of forcing it in the beginning. So I'm really glad that we dropped that background noise. But we're going to add some more atmospheric things in terms of sound effects and more production quality very, very soon. But we're going to do it a lot more intelligently than we did before. Well, we say me. I was the idiot that wasn't doing it right. Anyway, I mentioned something about another thing we're doing. And Viper, if you liked our Shadowrun episode, then I really hope you tune in to our very first spin-off podcast, which, yeah, this is our official announcement. The Gamers Tavern is now the Gamers Tavern Podcast Network, because we're doing an actual play podcast for Shadowrun with myself and Ross and a few other people, and we've got an awesome guy named Brandon who is running the games. And Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's called Gamers Tavern Game Table. The first episode, if you're listening to this live, it's going up on Monday, the 17th of February. If you're listening to this past then, go to gamerstavern.org and look it up. It's under the podcast menu. You'll find it. It is a blast. I'm playing Kyle Rogers, a former Shiawase bodyguard turned Shadowrunner and a die-hard professional. Ross's character is Ravenblood, Black Wolf, Deathblade, the pixie who learned how to be a Shadowrunner from Tridio and Simpsons, who writes his own Shadowrun fan fiction. So you can see the kind of odd couple clashing starting off right there. And it's a lot of fun. In the first episode, we actually crossed paths with a dangerous Seattle street gang called the Halloweeners, as we're trying to stave a couple of spoiled corp kids from their own stupidity. And there's a twist in this that I didn't see coming. I've been playing Shadowrun since I was 11. So, yeah, it's awesome. I love it. Make sure to go to gamerstavern.org and look up the Gamers Tavern Game Table under the podcast list, and make sure to follow that RSS feed as well. Subscribe to it. Also, speaking of things you definitely need to do, if you're in Colorado right now, like you downloaded this Thursday or Friday, right now, go to Aurora, Colorado this weekend for Genghis Khan. Ross is there, and he's running a lot of games. He's there as a guest of honor, along with several other past and future guests, including someone who got mentioned a lot in this podcast, Sean Patrick Fannin. So definitely go check that out. If you like this podcast and you want to support us, please visit gamerstavern.org and leave a comment to let us know what you think of the podcast. You can also visit our sponsors and our affiliate accounts to buy your favorite gaming supplies and help us make this show even better by supporting us financially. Also, make sure to go to facebook.com/gamerstavern and like us, or follow us on Twitter at GamersTavernPC, as in podcast, and follow us there. You can also find us on iTunes by searching for Gamers Tavern. Please leave us reviews, and any comments or reviews that you leave may be read on air, like I finally did again today. This podcast is licensed under a Creative Commons Non-Commercial No Derivatives 3.0 license. Further credits for music and other media can be found in the show notes at gamerstavern.org. We thank you for listening, and until next time, the tavern is closed.
Have you been looking for a dark fantasy RPG setting? Are you interested in seeing a new take on the action horror genre? Then you should check out Accursed. Accursed is a setting for the Savage Worlds RPG created by me, Ross Watson, and my good friends Jason Marker and John Dunn. It is a world where the heroes are monsters who fight for redemption against the witches who have conquered their land. To find out more about Accursed, search for Accursed on drivethrurpg.com. Accursed is now on sale there and in many other fine retailers for gaming PDFs. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy Accursed.
Gamers Tavern's listenership has exploded in 2014, and we want to reward you, our loyal listeners, by holding a contest. We've got a winner-take-all bundle of amazing games, and to top it all off, an iPod Shuffle preloaded with the latest episodes of the Gamers Tavern. So, what other games do you get? How about a signed copy of Accursed, the dark fantasy Savage Worlds campaign setting where you play the monsters fighting against the witches who cursed you, provided by Meliorvia. A signed copy of Tephra, the steampunk fantasy role-playing game of high adventure set in an alternate world, provided by Cracked Monocle. A signed copy of Dementalism, a card game from the twisted and strange world of Lowlife, provided by Mother Oath Creations. And a signed copy of Better Angels, a game of demonic comic book supervillainry, provided by Arc Dream Publications. And you also get one free admission to Con on the Cob, a celebration of game, art, freaks, and fun in Hudson, Ohio from October 16th through the 19th with the purchase of one adult admission. In order to secure your chance to win this amazing prize package, send an email to contest@gamerstavern.org with the subject line Mac sent me. Include your name, mailing address, and one suggestion for how you would make the Gamers Tavern podcast even better. Once again, that email address is contest@gamerstavern.org with the subject line, Mac sent me. Sorry, but this contest is for U.S. residents only. Full contest rules are available at gamerstavern.org/contest. Get your entry in by midnight Central Time on March 10th, 2014 for your chance to win it all.
Communicate.
Yeah, it's like everything else. You have to compromise sometimes.
Okay.
And sometimes it can just be a factor of making sure that you're secure in your relationship and, again, communicating properly. Because I haven't experienced this firsthand, but I have seen it.
Don't look at me.
I've got dogs barking in the background. Okay.
I have one scratching at the door of the pub as well.
That's not euphemism. Those are actually dogs barking.
Yes. Shut up!
Fix this in post.
I think
I'm trying.
With his significant other, is there something special that you think would probably be like advice you would give?
One thing I would really like to.
They're just voicing their opinions.
From the other room when they don't understand English. Oh, shut up! I'm trying to record. Anyway, one thing that I have seen happen a lot is people who